All right, I want to talk a little bit about the story that I'm writing, reimagining of the myth Perceval. Immerse myself in the story, trying to tell. Tolkien, who's a big influence on me, as you know, it's cliche, many fantasy authors. I love and appreciate and admire so much. It's the way that he sort of tells this story that and describes this place that you're familiar with, even though you've never been to it. And so that's part of what I'm trying to do in my story. I am here in a cottage, Tallgarth, Northwest Wales, where I am researching, just existing, being, exploring in the geography that serves as the setting for the book I'm now writing, which is a reimagining of the myth of Perceval. And I've been wanting to do this for a while. It's something I did in Athens last year before I released my third book. So my third book, that was Athens. So many of the things I talked about in my third book had their origin in thinkers and then the Greek tragedies, Aeschylus, Sophocles, etc. Anyway, so now I'm here. I've been in Wales in this cottage, Tallgarth, for a few days. Now, something that's also very important to me and why I'm calling this the Iron and Ink series, I'll speak a little bit more about that as I walk sort of into the village. But that's an introduction to this series. And now I'm just gonna give you a quick tour of the cottage. All right, this is the cottage. Chris and Allison are my hosts. They live over here. My little section is over here, this picnic table. I can enjoy the morning sun. Comes up. I got some friends here. I don't know if you'll be able to see them, but you're certainly be able to hear them. Not gonna get too close. There's a bunch of bees in these berry trees here. A couple little friends. This is my door. I'm gonna take you inside. So here we got kitchen, cook some meals. It's very nice. This is where I do my writing in the morning. Got a wood burning fireplace right here. This is perfect. So that every morning, this is the view. This is the view I get when I look out. It's fantastic. I'll take you upstairs quick. All right, so here it is. This is what the bedroom looks like. Honestly gives cabin vibes, which is perfect. I am basically waking up in the morning and writing until 10, 11 o'clock, and then going and doing what I'm about to do, which is going to work out. Eating in the little village. I'm gonna show you I'm gonna show you the gym that I found that I've been going to. Right now I'm about to walk to a soccer field that they have down in the village. I'm at the top of a hill. You'll see it when I'm walking down. So yeah, that's the first parts of my days here in Wales. Gotta show you before I go run my little my travel supplement stack. So of course we got the LMNTs on tap. Take one of those every morning and then sometimes at night. If I sweat a lot, got my new tonic. Shout out Chris Williamson. Take these in the morning when I sit down to write, and it's sort of like a brain capsules focus blend for mental performance and cognitive function. Then I got my Jocko creatine. This is some portable creatine, 5 grams I take every single day. And this is my buddy Anthony's brand. It's called CS2. It's a sleep supplement loaded with magnesium, helps me sleep, especially as I'm adjusting to different time zones. Normally not a C4 guy, but they have these convenient little travel packets. So been taking those whenever I hit a lifting session. I don't take them before I do a running session like I'm gonna do today. And I'm trying these for the first time. Usually I'm a Focus Aid person, have one pretty much every morning. But for travel this time, I'm trying these Salute sort of energy packets. And honestly, I've only had a couple so far. They're fantastic. I mix it with my LMNT in the morning, the last couple mornings, and feel like my brain is just on fire. So just wanted to give you a little sense of when I travel, what things I make sure I travel with to make sure I'm staying sharp and still performing my maintenance and progress and all those things. All right, that's it. I'll explain to you a little bit about sort of the ink side of Iron and Ink. And obviously the iron side is kind of self-explanatory. Iron in this case stands for the weights, but generally speaking, it sort of represents this training of the body. Now, fundamental to Iron and Ink is this philosophy that we have to have habits that train and cultivate sort of the three parts of our soul, what Plato called the tripartite theory of the soul: mind, body, spirit. So when we think about mind, that's the ink side. When we think about body, that's the iron side. Heart doesn't come into play other than it connects the two between them. That's the spirit. That's the essence of what it means to be man. That's where sort of an act of grace, mercy, kindness, some of the things that lift us above our animal instincts, those habits need cultivating too, and they are the things that make us truly man. But iron and ink, as it stands, is this idea that each of us, in order to have a magnanimous spirit, what I fundamentally believe, magnanimous meaning something like big-souled in the works of Aristotle, to have a magnanimous spirit, big soul, what we need to do is we need to have habits that cultivate our mind and habits that cultivate our body. When I say habits that cultivate the mind, this can be writing, it can be painting, it can be reading, it can be coding. The only requirement is that it has to be something that stretches your mind to its limits. It causes you to be frustrated, causes you to struggle and wrestle with your current capabilities. There's this idea that the mind once stretched can never retain its original dimension. And I believe as storytelling creatures, stretching our mind, coming to know ourselves and the world is exactly the growth that we love to see ourselves making. Now, that's this idea behind sort of the ink portion. Similarly, when it comes to the body, we know this in physical exercise, whether it's running or lifting or gymnastics or some other physical pursuit, there's a growth that happens when we put ourselves under tension, and the adaptation that occurs makes our muscles grow bigger, our tendons grow stronger. So it's the same idea that when we put ourselves under tension, whether it's the weight, it's focusing on something that's intellectual. Those two pursuits, body and mind, iron and ink, are what I believe sort of necessary and fundamental to becoming who we can become as human beings and fulfilling our telos or end, our purpose. We are this creature that has a unique capability of exercising all of these things, of having sort of reason, of being able to intentionally select hard things because we know they will make us stronger, being able to think about the future, tell our story, imagine a better way forward. Those are all the elements that go into this spirit of iron and ink, and sort of what inspire me as a writer and a person trying to be everything I can be, stretching for the star. This is the reason my first 3 books have the title This Way to the Stars, is because there is a stretching and a reaching component to happiness, to fulfillment, where when we are in the process of making progress toward those things is when we feel the most fulfilled, when our spirit is most filled, with the recognition that they represent an ideal, a chasm we cannot cross totally, a bridge we cannot walk over entirely. And that is where this idea of sort of a leap of faith and humility, that though we reach for the stars, we will never reach them. There will always be something beyond them that we cannot attain. And for me, this is represented by God. It's the humility before God and the understanding that we are in the eyes of a judge that stands outside time. And as beings in time, this life will never be able to sort of reach the full height of a God outside time. That's why St. Augustine says our hearts are restless till we rest. And I believe some element of that is true. But while we are here, while we do breathe, while we do live, I do think that as seeds of God meant to flourish, there's one God by nature, as Boethius says, but many by participation. Not that we are on equal footing with God, but that we have been blessed with this seed of divinity, that it is ours to cultivate. It's our job to see that seed grow as far as it will and as far as it can. It's our job to water that seed, nurture it, foster it, and see it blossom into what it can become. That is what I think our purpose on this earth is, and that is the general ethos behind the idea of iron and ink. And that is why I find it so important to push ourselves to progress in pursuits of the mind, pursuits of the body, pursuits in the spirit, because that is how we as the acorn grow to become the oak. All right, that's enough for now. It's time to get this work. We are running through the Welsh countryside to a place called Portmeirion. Some open fields, the sun, the mountains. Let's get it.
pretty uphill. Look at those mountains in the background. Not sure if you can see them. Yeah. Pretty great. Of course, these are the woods that lead to Russell's house. Of course they are. The view that he would have had. Incredible. Incredible. Look at that. Look at that. All right, now we go to the dancing tree. Look at that bad boy. The dancing tree. Something like this tree is going to be the home of Merlin. All right, we stopped in Port Marin. Look at this little town. Very cool. We're gonna go for a little walk because it's very touristy. Okay, there's a scene in my book where Perceval is riding through the woods. He sort of bursts through the forest and comes to a cliff and emerges into something like his first ever view of the ocean. And so I'm gonna take you back to how I imagine this feeling, although the ocean's dry right now, so it's gonna be like this. Ah. Here it is, Port Marin. And it is a huge reason why I chose to come to Wales while I'm writing this book, because there's only a certain amount of seeing the place or reading about the place that can teach you about a place. Some element has to be experienced in an embodied experience where you're physically there. You just feel the energy of the place. Today we're going to the gym. Say hi to our little friends right here. Look at these guys. Look at these guys. Heck yeah. Some friends for sure. All right, let's get after it. Exactly the type of structure that nature claims back as its own that I would expect. All right, here's what I'm doing today. You're about half an hour in, and all I'm doing is walking out into the trails. Gonna walk for an hour, see how far I can go in an hour. Hopefully try to get to this mountain that I sort of see in the distance. And after I hit an hour, then I will turn back and go the direction that I came. So let's see
where the hour takes us. This is what I'm looking at. Not a soul in sight, just me, my thoughts, my stories, and these abandoned buildings that seem straight out of a fairy tale. This is amazing. All right, that is the hill, if you can see it, mountain that I'm trying to get to. Who knows if we'll actually get there, but that is at least the direction I'm trying to head. Something that I've been thinking about just in this part of my journey so far is how much this applies to life. Where I'm trying to go is up there. Right now, I find myself on the path going downhill. I feel like so many times in life, we have these destinations that we want to get to, and we become addicted to this missed linear progress where we expect the journey to always be one step upward, one step closer. But so often in my life, what I've found is that we can choose this peak and we can make what we think is progress toward that peak until we come to a chasm we can't cross. We come to some sort of obstacle and we realize that this wasn't exactly the right direction. But our pride and our ego gets so attached to the progress we made up to that point, we don't want to let it go. It's really hard. We don't want to have the courage to go down the hill to go up the hill. We don't have the courage to begin again. But it's precisely that avoidance by failing to begin again is what is putting us in our own way and stopping us from making real and continued progress toward our aim. And that is why sometimes you have to go down to go up. All right, case in point, hit a dead end going that way. You can see the mountain back behind me. So we are retracing our steps, try to find another way. Here we go. Oh, this kind of looks like a well up here. These kind of structures are so fascinating to me. Maybe it's just a fence. Either way, it's so cool. No idea how old something like that is. I just like imagine like a wolf or a bear on top of that crest there. Apparently, there used to be bears and wolves out here. According to my host, he doesn't think that there are any more. I haven't seen any traces of any, but you can never be too careful, I suppose. All right, we just came out that gate. We're walking up this hill and we're gonna see how far away our friendly mountain is. This type of summit is the type of summit that I feel like you see on book covers, especially fantasy book covers, when you have a silhouette of a character sort of standing on the crest of a hill, looking out across whatever he's looking out across. And I'm inviting you to experience that moment with me. And boy, man, this is beautiful. I think I'm gonna sit right here. So this is, in the story, you will recognize this poem as one of Tolkien's most famous. In the story, it's when Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin, and when they reach Rivendell, this is a poem we find out Bilbo has written for his friend Strider. And in my version, it's in page 277. Frodo felt Bilbo stir impatiently at his side. Evidently, he was annoyed on his friend's behalf. Standing suddenly up, he burst out. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all that those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes of fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be the blade that was broken. The crownless again
shall be king. Not very good perhaps, but to the point. If you need more beyond the word of Elrond, if that was worth a journey of 110 days to hear, you had best to listen. He sat down with a snort. I made that up myself, he whispered to Frodo, for the Dunedain. A long time ago, when he first told me about himself. I almost wish that my adventures were not over, that I could go with him when his day comes. Aragorn smiled at him, then he turned to Boromir again. For my part, I forgive your doubt, he said. Little do I resemble the figures of Elendil and Isildur, as they stand carven in their majesties in the hall of Denethor. I am but the heir of Isildur, not Isildur himself. I've had a hard life, and the leagues that lie between here and Gondor are a small part in that count of my journeys. I've crossed many mountains and many rivers, and trodden many paths, even in the far countries of Rhûn and Harad, where the stars are strange. But my home, such as I have, is in the north, for here the heirs of Valindiel have ever dwelt in a long line broken from father into son, for many generations. Our days have darkened and we have dwindled, but ever the sword has passed to a new keeper. And I will say to you, Boromir, ere I end, lonely men we are, rangers of the wild, hunters, but hunters ever of the servants of the enemy. For they are found in many places, not in Mordor alone.
All right, you can hear the train starting to rumble behind me. Not sure if we'll be able. Oh yeah, here it comes. Let's see. Can hardly see it. All right, friends, it is another beautiful morning in Penryn. We are at the train station. Alright, so we had a change of events. There was a small fire that apparently broke out near Blau Festiniog, so we had to turn around. And now we are in Tanabolch, which is a small little station on the way back. Apparently it's drier than normal for this time of year, and so there's been a risk of fires, haven't gotten a lot of rain. So sort of stopped. Now just taking a little break, got a little snack, and then we're gonna head back. All right, so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about on this trip and writing my book and just being in this landscape and absorbing it is there's this idea that both C.S. Lewis and Tolkien in their fiction talk about. C.S. Lewis was a huge fan of this, what he called the discarded image, which was this medieval mindset that saw itself as at the bottom of a universe, in a structured and ordered universe that sort of rose hierarchically toward God. There was something called the lunar boundary, which is this idea that the moon represented the highest thing that the earthly person could see, and sort of beyond that was this celestial realm, and that's what it represented from an image standpoint. And when we think about it in the context of how much Lewis loved Plato, and just in general sort of this like Platonic idea of the forms and transcendent beauty, we start to see some of what Lewis was doing in his book Till We Have Faces. There's a scene in Till We Have Faces where one of the main characters, Psyche, is having a conversation with her sister Oriol, and she sort of stares out at the mountains, looks at the mountains, and is describing her decision to go away in search of sort of this mountain god, and it's sort of her resignation to be submitted to this mountain god. And what she's talking about, what she says to Oriol in that decision is, she stares at the mountains and she says that she longs for the place from where that beauty comes from. She's looking at the mountain and she's talking about this longing that comes on her for this, where the beauty of these places originate from. Now there's a scene in Lord of the Rings where Samwise in Return of the King says something with similar effect, and it's something like that the stars beyond the passing clouds are evidence of this beauty that will last longer than any sort of passing situation. And again, it's this idea of longing, sort of the stars, the moon, the mountains, pieces in nature that put us in touch with something that transcends our current experience and any suffering we might have. It puts us in touch with some divine thing that stands outside of time. And so it's that longing. I mean, just being in these places, looking at these mountains, hearing the waterfalls, swimming in the streams, seeing the stumps, seeing old ruins, being in this presence, it creates a longing. It creates a longing to some kind of union with the beauty. I mean, you see, this is a little bit of the idea of Psalms, and this idea that God's handiwork is in all things, and it brings you to a place where you can't help but want to be a vessel through which that very beauty moves, to be filled with it. And that's something like the creative act to me. That's something like the creator's purpose, is to be as much as possible sort of a steward and herald of that beauty and testify to it for others. And that's what I'm hoping to do with my books.
All right, today we are walking, call it a little bit of a pilgrimage, to this castle, and it is roughly 6.5, 7 miles away from my town. I've been going for about an hour 15, so have about another hour or so till we get there. It's gonna end up being about a half marathon in total, but yeah, it's gonna be worth it. It's gonna be awesome. The Harlech Castle is home to the longest siege in the history of Wales. It's part of the Battle of Roses, it was called. And so part of the reason I'm going there is because we are using it as a model for Castle Beaupère in my story. So I want to familiarize myself with the anatomy of a castle. And that's what we're looking to do there. I'm gonna try to shoot some images of a drone, but we'll see. All right, to the castle we continue. All right, we made it from the town of Harlech, making our way to that castle. All right, we're about to go up this street, which is called the world's steepest street. I guess we'll find out. Access to the sea for supplies to withstand a siege. All right, so we're on the back side of the castle here. You can see, come out the back. Here's the ocean, strategically set here to be able to get supplied by the sea and withstand sieges. It's more of the various chambers inside all the rooms. All right, now we are walking on the battlements, which is where archers would have stood. This is the front of the castle, in the center of the courtyard. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the story that I'm writing, the reimagining of the myth Perceval. One of the things I love about coming out here for 10 days and being 6 hours ahead of my regular world is that I kind of have the entire morning to just immerse myself in the story trying to tell. And a lot of that comes from just taking in people and the stories I'm inspired by. So this morning, for instance, there's a part that reminded me of the story of Gilgamesh.
So I went back and read that part and thought about what that looked like in the context of my story. And then there's another scene that reminded me of a scene from Virgil's Aeneid. So when to refresh my memory on how Virgil approached that scene, thought about how I wanted to work that way into it as well. And then obviously, of course, we have Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, who's a big influence on me, as he is with, it's cliche, many fantasy authors. And so I made sure that I had sort of this book, The Fellowship of the Ring, and The Two Towers with me, so that, whether it's at night or in the morning, I can be reminding myself sort of how Tolkien did it and being inspired by him. It's almost kind of become a little bit cliche and overdone and maybe even a little cringy, I think, at the number of fantasy authors who say that they want to be like Tolkien or they want to write like Lord of the Rings. But I think that's true of me also. He was a master. And I think outside of the context of, there aren't going to be any elves or trolls or dwarves in my story, but but Merlin is involved, so there is a little bit of magic. And it's not necessarily sort of those parts of Tolkien that I love and appreciate and admire so much. It's the way that he sort of tells this story that and describes this place that you're familiar with, even though you've never been to it. And so that's part of what I'm trying to do in my story. Then obviously, there are going to be shades of Gandalf and shades of Rowling's Dumbledore in my Merlin. My Merlin will also be like the Merlin from C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength. So there's a number of different influences. And then obviously I take a lot of inspiration from, I take a lot of inspiration from the author Stephen Lawhead, who wrote a historical fiction book about the myths of Robin Hood. Hood, Tuck, and Scarlet, I think, is the trilogy. Highly recommended if you haven't read it. And then Christopher Paolini's Aragon series that I loved as a kid. I think, as I think about the greatest influences on the book I'm trying to write, it probably is obviously Chrétien de Troyes. Perceval is a huge inspiration for the Virgil's Aeneid in terms of sort of like the fighting and the aura and just the atmosphere of the book and sort of Aeneas as a hero. We got Lord of the Rings is Tolkien. His stuff is up there too. But those are sort of the influences that I'm trying to sit with and work into the book. And so a large part of my process is to refresh my memory on those things. The books I love. There's also T.H. White's Once and Future King. There's going to be some elements of that. Disney's Sword and Stone, some elements of that. It's just this idea of like, there's, as an artist, as somebody trying to create something, especially in an AI world, I've been thinking a lot about it. I think there's a very productive way to use AI as something like a research assistant. What has always distinguished artists, in my view, the good ones, is two things. It's their taste, their particular taste, and honestly, their ability to edit and refine and synthesize. There's a certain amount of ideas that are nothing new, that are sort of the restatement of old ideas that other people have said. I think artificial intelligence will do a decent job regurgitating those ideas. But the people that have a genuine taste, that can sort of run what's been said a million times over through new filters in a way that is entirely and uniquely them, sort of based off their unique inputs, all the things they consumed, the life that they've lived. It all sort of gives us the capacity to tell old stories in completely new ways, even if they carry whiffs of familiarity of, our inspirations. That's necessarily going to happen, but it's that mixture of inspirations into some sort of unique cocktail. That's the key.